Welcome to my talk on Beyond the Screen Understanding the Larger Impact of UX Design. Now, before talking about UX design, I like to bring up this simple question, and I want all of you to try answering it in the comments. What do you do with your leftover food? Now, personally, I have this one way where I don't like to throw away good food, so I like to take this food, keep it in my fridge until I wait for it to get spoiled, so that way when I throw it away it's not really good food anymore, so I think I feel a little less guilty. But we all in some way or the other contribute to this idea of food wastage, where where we realize that more than one third of our food that's produced is lost or wasted in some way. Now, this is a really complicated problem and a huge problem that we're facing. So, how do you combat something like this? How are you able to combat something so big? Well, I want to talk about one person who has found his own way of helping. This is Massimo. He is a three Michelin star chef in Italy. For him, it's not just about the food, but the entire concept behind it and everything that food does to bring people together. He believes that food brings memories and people together and has the power to do so. And as a chef, it's his job to do exactly that. He uses only traditional ingredients, the ones that you can find at home, and find creative ways to put them together, where he believes that we don't have to necessarily need complicated or fancy ingredients. You can create something fancy with using even the simple ones. This is a dish by him called Bread is Gold. This dish was created to combat leftover food. The idea behind the bread was that bread in fact is like gold for most people. It's one of the most fundamental ingredient, and even leftover bread can be used to make something beautiful. He didn't just stop here. After looking at the success that this dish had when it was being served in Milan in shelters, he extended this idea and made an entire book. The book, also called Bread is Gold, is a list of dishes that can be that where leftover food is used as ingredients to create a gourmet meal. These dishes could change the way that we feed our planet, because anywhere across the whole world can now start using their leftover food to create much better or create even more food and give meaning or give more or extend the amount that we're able to use our food. This is another dish of his called riso capio e pepe. Now, before I talk a little bit about this, let's talk about an incident that happened in on May 20th, 2012 in Modena. Now, is a part in northern Italy, and it was the epicenter of two overlapping -6 earthquakes, which completely devastated the city. A lot of lives lost. It was a huge disaster. And for those of you who are not aware, Modena is one of the primary areas which produces Parmesan, the cheese that we're all so fond of. In fact, after this earthquake, 360,000 big barrels of Parmesan were damaged. This could have meant the end of half the production of Parmesan cheese. And if we didn't act quick, all of this would have gone to waste. If people would start to lose their jobs, businesses would start to go down. It would have led to a huge economic crisis. And that is where Massimo came in. He created a dish called riso capio e pepe, and the idea behind this dish was to make a risotto where the rice is cooked using the parmesan. And with the help of this, the idea was that he wanted to talk about what happened in Modena and share this dish with the rest of the world, where they were able to make a dinner across the whole world where everybody would cook this dish and everybody would try their bit in trying to buy out the food that was going to go to waste. And that is what happened. Across the whole world, London, Japan, New York, everywhere, they cooked this dish. 40,000 people were cooking riso capio e pepe. And at the end of it, all 360 barrels were sold. Nobody had to lose their job. No cheesemaker had to shut down. According to Massimo, this dish was a recipe as a social gesture, where when he was coming up with the recipe, he didn't just think about the most obvious reasons why you make a recipe, but also he was able to think beyond. He thought about how something as simple as a recipe could do more, so much more that it had the power to save the world or save the city of Modena. Now, as designers, I too think we have a lot to learn from this story. I believe that design has the power to do a lot more. If we're able to think bigger, because we often, as designers, don't realize the work our or the impact our work is capable of having. And that impact is what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about the bigger impact that UX design is capable of having. If we're able to just step back and think beyond the screen, we're able to realize how much our work is capable of impacting our lives. Maybe all of us might not have drove our cars into a lake, but I'm pretty sure we can relate to this. The idea that we rely so much on some of these apps sometimes that, well, we use them and we rely on them to get us to work on time. Right? Google Maps has started to change the way we navigate our cities. We use maps all the time to get anywhere on time. In fact, I remember when I moved into the city when I was new, I didn't walk out and start looking for places. I was too scared to just go by myself and find all these areas. In fact, I looked at Google Maps. I zoomed into Google Maps, walked my street like I would in real. But look at all the places, look at the rating, there's so much more information that Google Maps gives me that it just was a better choice for me to do. Now, this is not just limited to Google Maps. Our phones have given us access to a whole new world where it's helped us improve or navigate our lives. But this impact is not always positive. There are also a lot of negative implications of having access to a technology like this. Now, I wanted to put together some facts in here to show you or give you an idea of how addicted we are to our phones, but I realized I don't think I need to. I'm pretty sure most of us here know exactly how much we're all secretly addicted to our phones. Speaking of addiction, how many of you have been addicted to this game? This is called Flappy Bird. It had come out a few years back, and I remember playing it for hours and hours. And in fact, I remember it was so addicting that I would be stuck glued to my phone, not knowing what's happening around me, and just trying to get the highest score. In fact, Flappy Bird was one of the most addicting video games ever made. So addicting, so that it had to be taken down. The owner of the game received death threats from so many families who used this, who played this game, that they started to lose their lives into this game, right? And the only solution that the owner could do is to take the game down. Now, that might not be the right solution. We can't just start taking things down. So we have to be smart about it and understand how do we instead include some of these aspects when we are creating products like this. In fact, companies like Google and Apple have figured a few ways out where they share the screen time or um, give you access to the information to see how much you're actually using your phone, so you're able to combat or avoid getting too addicted. YouTube include added a feature that can be used to remind ourselves to take breaks, where you can set a certain amount of time that you want YouTube to remind you after, and also you can set it so it reminds you of your bedtime, so you don't end up getting stuck in using and watching YouTube way too much beyond your bedtime. Headspace has been enabling millions of people to bring meditation and mindfulness into their daily lives and help them combat issues like anxiety, stress, and depression. So, what I'm trying to say is that companies have already started to think about this. They've already started to look beyond what just their product and try to look at much bigger problems that we're facing in our lives. Just like Massimo, when he was trying to create his dish, he didn't just limit himself to think about the immediate or the most obvious things like taste or presentation or serving size. He was able to zoom out and think of a lot more things, much bigger economic, social, and cultural aspects. Things that would help the entire city from wasting all the Parmesan cheese. Things that could support the local cheesemakers and essentially help the company through this economic crisis. And I think as UX designers, I can see a lot of resemblance in this map. In fact, I'm sure as designers, we do have immediate and direct things that we think about, like accessibility, usability, aesthetics, but we also have long-term things to think about. Things like industry trends, things like the bigger community, humanity, ethical considerations, and long-term considerations or implications of our work, social responsibility. So there are areas that we have to look beyond to and learn from them to help create something more holistic. But I don't know about you, but all of this sounds really confusing and overwhelming for me. I mean, how do I, as a designer, start zooming out into my work and applying all of these principles? Well, turns out there are, like I said, companies who have already done this. And they found very simple ways where just from changing your perspective or re-looking at things that we already know to look beyond and try to look beyond the obvious, they were able to find new ways. And I'm here going to share two such ways or two such places where we can re-look and try to look beyond the obvious, beyond the screen, and try to help us think of the bigger aspect. The first one is the problem. Now, as a designer, we all believe that design has power to solve problems. But when we often look at this problem, we only look at what's at the surface. To indicate this, we're going to use the iceberg model, a model that talks about where, just like a real iceberg, there are places of the iceberg that are visible to everybody, and there are places that are hidden and underlying. And just similarly, even when we look at problems, there are surface level problems that we have, and in this case, they're called behaviors. These are things that are visible to all of us, patterns or trends that we can see people doing. Now, the next layer are structures. Structures produce behaviors. They're the frameworks within which we operate. Like the rules of a game, they determine how we play. These could be policies, guidelines, processes, roles, rituals. They could be formal, informal, written or unwritten rules, but they are essentially the tangible things that we design to influence our mindsets and behaviors. Which are the final thing? Mindsets. Mindsets give rise to our structures and beliefs and values. They are the assumptions and beliefs or values that shape our perception of the world. They give meaning to our actions. We do why we do because of the mindset that we have. They lie at the root of most of the complicated parts of the problem. Now, if you were to go back to looking at food wastage, we could see that one of the behaviors that we can commonly see is people throwing away perfectly good food. But we don't realize that this also could happen because they might not have access to certain donation, or people end up buying more food than they need because of the way that they are packaged by supermarkets. We also forget that there's a perception that food is cheap and disposable, so we feel less ethical implication of wasting food. But the general idea, whatever it is that we have a certain problem, and when we look at it, try to look deeper, try to look beyond, try to understand what are the underlying mindsets or the reasons why these problems occur, and find the real reason why these problems occur. The second thing that we want to do is to relook at the user and user experience. Now, working with users isn't really completely new to most of us. We have ways like the customer journey map, for example, that help us think beyond just the user, or think of the user, think of their journeys, their pain points, and really understand what goes on in these users' minds when they're going through these different steps. But we often leave these maps incomplete. When we often say we're making a user journey, but we end up mistaking them for customer journeys or end user journeys, where we realize that we are not actually that we say user, but we only consider the end user. So if you were to take a deeper look inside user, where we know that it's not just the end users, there are other users as well. So coming back to the example of how might we reduce food wastage, we know that we're not the end users are not the only ones responsible for throwing away food. There are people who directly influence these end users. People like their neighbors or grocery stores or cooks directly have an influence on how we waste our food. There are also indirect stakeholders like farmers or governments or education systems that also indirectly influence and affect how we reduce our food. This is called a stakeholder map. It essentially helps you understand who all the users are in your problem and help you navigate through them and understand the same problem from the perspectives of other people, and really know that it's not just the end user who's part of this problem, but there are a lot more people. So the next time we're creating our user journey maps, let's not leave them incomplete. Let's expand on them. Let's think of the direct stakeholders and the indirect stakeholders. Let's map their journeys too. And let's really help us understand this holistic perspective and look beyond just our users, look beyond just the problem and really understand what's going on. Now, again, all of this start I know can start sounding very complicated, which is why I'd like to show you a few examples that I think do a really great job of explaining some of the aspects that we spoke about. Um, Also, we do have a Q&A section after this, so if you have any questions in terms of what I'm trying to say, leave them in the chat, send them as a question, and we make sure that we cover that in the Q&A section. Now, the first one or the map I like to talk about is an ecosystem map in healthcare made by Click Health. Now, this is very similar to a stakeholder map where it shows you all the different people like the caregiver, the payer, the patient, and the doctors who are involved in the entire system. But not just them, it also goes one level deeper and shows you all the systems that they use in their as their platforms, right? This gives Looking at this map helps you really understand how all the people are connected, what are all the systems that we're using, systems that are not just limited to the digital systems but also things like prescription which are handwritten, right? Calendars that are physically put in maps. So having this view gives you the idea of or gives you the view visibility of really looking at the entire system. Here's another example of organizing an event done by UX Booth. What I really like about this is the diagram on the right half of it, where they have highlighted inside the smaller circle activities that are happening inside the app. These are again common known to us, but what they have done is to also think beyond and expand their thinking into including aspects that are outside the app. Right? Looking at this, they were able to consider aspects like inviting or the ideation and planning around the event itself, sharing pictures and discussing event notes. The thinking of these additional aspects, they were able to think beyond just what the app does to what the entire problem is supposed to be. And looking at this, they were able to think about aspects like how do you include ideation and planning as part of the app, or if not part of the app, how do you really solve for this to make sure that we're looking at the entire problem end to end and not just limiting it to the app. Here's another great example by a service designer called Anna Soto. She has some really, really good service design work. I encourage all of you to go look her up and look at all her work. This is a journey that she had created, which talks about the journey of a user through Disney World. Now, what I really like about this is first, just the visualization of it. It looks so beautiful. It shows you how when these maps or these things that we create don't necessarily have to always look like the way that we're expecting them to, but should really work for what we are trying to create. Here, one of the things I really like about this journey is when that while it does talk about the user's journey through Disney World, she realized that when we say user, it's not just an individual person, it's in fact a family. And what she had done is to go step beyond and really understand who are these users of this family, where she had mapped out all the different people who are part of the family and how their individual journeys are all linked together. This helped her understand or not just look at how individual users can be designed for, but how do we design for them as whole. There could be parts where we know that fathers and certain children might come together at, which could be used as opportunities to enhance these moments. Thinking about this helped her think more beyond and think outside of just the main user. Here's another example where uh, the people at Bright Vessel have created this customer journey map where they had not just limited it to the customer journey, but also started to map out all the different departments and the teams that are part of this customer journey. Looking at it this way help them understand who all are involved at what points in the customer journey, so that when they were working to improve a certain part in the customer journey, they were able to in fact include some of these additional people and help them improve this journey. Here's a picture from a project that I worked on a few years back. That's my reflection on the top left. I was so happy to take this picture because you see, what we were working on that point was to help improve the process of owning a home. Now, for most of us who have gone through this, it's a tedious 4 year long journey. And the whole process, everybody is typically very isolated. The way that it's done in the industry is very different. People work in silos, and the customer is really kind of thrown from one place to another. But this blueprint, or the map that you see in the middle, which is a service blueprint, helped us understand or look beyond just our individual tasks to understand how we all actually come together, how we all can work together and as one team. In fact, to remind us what we're in this together, we signed a pledge, a document that helped us look at the much bigger goal and help us understand or remind us of our long-term purpose. I remember we also made this map on the right, which was a visual illustration of the entire journey. And I remember in one of these workshops, there was this one person from the construction team who didn't really understand why he's part of a customer journey workshop. You see, he didn't believe he was part of the system, or he didn't believe that he was related or influencing the customer journey. He thought that as a person working in construction, his focus was to just complete the project and construct it on time as per schedule. And if he did that, the customers would be happy. But when, but he didn't think, or he was not able to think beyond that. He wasn't able to think about how he can influence customers as a whole. And when he walked by this with this journey, I remember he immediately stopped, and what caught his attention was in the center, seeing the half constructed house in the same way that it was in real. And next to that, he saw himself, a tiny little caricature, which is just an illustration on a piece of paper. But this simple illustration made him realize that yes, he is too, in fact, part of this whole system. He didn't really know how, but he knew that it was being considered. He knew that he was being considered and being thought of when all this was being designing. He felt it was real. Now, what these tools did was helped the people in the team look beyond just their work, where the pledge was something that was kept on the side, and everybody would watch it every day as they would pass by in our city, in our office, and looking at it kind of helped navigate these small conversations where we which helped us understand how we all come together and fit in together in a bigger perspective. Now, to recap, I'd like to borrow a small clip from this famous movie that gives you a really good idea of what I'd like you to walk away with. So, if there was one takeaway that I'd like you to have from this talk, this would be it. It's to look beyond what you can see. Because if you're able to look beyond just what's visible, you're able to find out the invisible, find out the things that are the underlying reasons why these visible parts are there. If we're able to look beyond our users, we're able to understand everyone who's working together. And in doing so, we're able to create solutions that are more inclusive, effective, and impactful. But if we want to create solutions that truly make a difference, we need to dig deeper and consider everyone that's involved. I like to end with this quote from Mahatma Gandhi, where he said, the difference between what we do and what we're capable of doing would suffice for most of the problems in our world. And I completely agree with this. If we're able to think beyond and think bigger and go beyond from what we're able to do to what we're capable of doing, where we're going not just how things are going to look like, but work like, but we also need to think about how they serve for the greater good and find new solutions to old problems, one experience at a time. I think we can leave this world a little better than we found it. Thank you. Thank you for listening. I hope this talk has inspired you to look beyond in your own work as well. And a special thanks to Vivek as well, who really helped me put this talk together. For everyone else, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And if you want to start a conversation about service design, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Feel free to come to me with anything. Thank you.